The grand hall of the celestial nexus shimmered under a cascade of crystalline lights. It was an evening like any other for Althea Vera, the Heiress to House Vera, a name that commanded respect across galaxies. Her presence alone seemed to command attention, her opalescent skin glowing softly as if kissed by starlight. Every movement she made was deliberate. Every word she spoke measured and precise. To those who didn't know her, she was perfection incarnate, untouchable and divine. But beneath the polished veneer lay secrets buried so deep they threatened to suffocate her. Althea adjusted the holographic emitter embedded in her wristband, ensuring its projection remained flawless. She had worn it since childhood, a device designed to mask the jagged scars that marred her otherwise perfect body. Those scars were remnants of a tragic accident decades ago, an explosion orchestrated by enemies of House Vera when she was just 10 years old. The blast had left her clinging to life, her once pristine form forever altered. In her culture, where physical flawlessness equated to worthiness, such imperfections were seen not only as weakness but as disgraceful. Tonight, however, there was someone new among the crowd. A man stood near the edge of the room, leaning casually against a pillar while sipping on what appeared to be some kind of earth beverage, coffee, perhaps. He wasn't dressed in the elaborate finery typical of galactic dignitaries. Instead, he wore simple utilitarian attire marked with grease stains and scorch marks. His name was Cal Draven, a human engineer known for his unconventional inventions and brash demeanor. Humans were rare at these gatherings, often dismissed as too primitive or reckless, yet Cal's reputation preceded him. Rumors swirled about his ability to create machines capable of feats even advanced alien civilizations couldn't replicate. As Althea moved through the throng of guests, exchanging pleasantries with ambassadors and nobles alike, she felt his eyes on her. At first, she ignored it, chalking it up to curiosity over her status. But then something strange happened. As she passed beneath one of the floating chandeliers, its light flickered briefly, causing her holographic overlay to glitch. For a split second, a faint line, the outline of one of her scars, became visible along her collarbone. No one else noticed, save for Cale. His gaze sharpened, and without hesitation, he stepped forward, intercepting her path. "Heiress Vera," he said, his voice carrying a mix of confidence and irreverence. "I've heard much about you. May I say, your poise is unmatched." Althea froze, her heart pounding. Had he seen? She forced a smile, her tone icy yet polite. "Thank you, Mr. Draven. Your reputation precedes you as well. Tell me, what brings a human engineer to this gathering?" Cale tilted his head, studying her intently. There was no mockery in his expression, only genuine interest. "A project," he replied vaguely. "One I think might intrigue you. Perhaps we could discuss it further, privately." Though suspicion gnawed at her, Althea nodded. Something about him unsettled her, but also intrigued her. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, unburdened by the rigid protocols that governed everyone else here. Or maybe it was the fact that he hadn't recoiled in disgust or whispered behind her back after catching that brief glimpse of her secret. Whatever it was, Cal Draven had planted a seed of curiosity in Althea's mind, a seed that would grow into something neither of them could have anticipated. The private lounge Althea had chosen for their meeting was a stark contrast to the glittering grandeur of the gala hall. Dimly lit and adorned with minimalist furniture, it offered a quiet refuge from prying eyes. Althea sat stiffly on one of the sleek chairs, her posture as rigid as ever, while Cale leaned back casually in his own seat, seemingly unfazed by her icy demeanor. "So," Cale began, placing a small data tablet on the table between them, "let's talk about my project." Althea raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She wasn't here because she cared about whatever invention he was peddling. She wanted answers. How much did he know? What had he seen? But instead of confronting him outright, she decided to play along for now. Cale tapped the tablet, bringing up a holographic display of swirling blueprints and schematics. "I've been working on a new energy source," he explained, his voice animated. "It's compact, efficient, and most importantly, clean. I think it could revolutionize interstellar travel." Althea glanced at the designs briefly before dismissing them with a flick of her wrist. "Fascinating," she said dryly. "But why bring this to me?" Cale smirked, leaning forward slightly. "Because you're not just any Heiress, are you? You're smart, resourceful, and, let's face it, you appreciate innovation more than most people here." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "Besides, I thought we might have something else to discuss." Her jaw tightened, so he had noticed. Still, she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her squirm. "If you're referring to earlier tonight," she said coolly, "I assure you, it was nothing. A minor malfunction, easily corrected." "Sure," Cale replied, his tone light but probing. "Or maybe it's something deeper." For a moment, silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Althea's mind raced. Should she dismiss him outright? Walk away and pretend this conversation never happened? Yet something stopped her. Perhaps it was the way he looked at her, not with judgment or disdain, but with genuine curiosity. Or perhaps it was the faint hope that he might actually be able to help her with her secret. Finally, she sighed, relenting. "Fine. Let's say their asterisk is asterisk something deeper. Why would you care?" Cale shrugged, his expression softening. "Because everyone has flaws, Althea. Even someone like you. And sometimes, those flaws aren't weaknesses. They're opportunities. If you're willing to trust me, I might be able to offer solutions you haven't considered." His words struck a chord within her. For years, she'd lived under the weight of shame, believing her scars made her less worthy. But Cale's perspective was different. He didn't see imperfection as failure. He saw potential. Against her better judgment, Althea agreed to collaborate with him. They would meet aboard Cale's workshop ship, a vessel she soon discovered was as chaotic as its owner. Tools lay scattered across every surface, half-finished prototypes hung from the ceiling, and the air smelled faintly of burnt metal. It was a far cry from the pristine halls of House Vera, but oddly enough, Althea found herself relaxing in the cluttered environment. As they worked together over the next few days, Cale's brashness softened into earnest enthusiasm, and Althea began to open up, not just about technology, but about herself. She learned that Cale hailed from Earth, where humanity's rapid technological advancements often clashed with societal norms. In turn, he coaxed stories out of her about growing up in House Vera, though she still avoided mentioning the scars directly. Their dynamic shifted subtly during these sessions. Althea started to see glimpses of vulnerability beneath Cale's confident exterior, while Cale grew more attuned to the layers of pain hidden behind Althea's composed facade. Though neither fully trusted the other yet, they both sensed that this partnership could lead to something greater, something neither of them had anticipated. Little did they know, their collaboration would change not only Althea's life, but also the course of their futures. Days turned into weeks as Althea and Cale continued their work aboard his workshop ship. The vessel, though chaotic and cramped, had become a strange sort of sanctuary for Althea. For the first time in years, she found herself free from the suffocating expectations of House Vera. Here, amidst the hum of machinery and the faint scent of oil, she could almost forget the weight of her secrets. But secrets have a way of surfacing when least expected. One afternoon, while they were testing a prototype energy converter, disaster struck. A sudden power surge caused a feedback loop, sending sparks flying across the room. Althea instinctively raised her arm to shield her face, but the movement disrupted the holographic overlay concealing her scars. In an instant, the projection flickered, and then vanished entirely. Her heart stopped. Cale froze mid-repair, his tools clattering to the floor as his eyes landed on her exposed arm. Jagged lines crisscrossed her pale skin, stark against the soft glow of the ship's interior lights. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was deafening. Althea felt her cheeks burn with shame. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear. But before she could move, Cale broke the tension with a single word. Wow. She blinked at him, startled. What? He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. I said, wow. Those are incredible. Incredible. She repeated, her voice trembling. They're grotesque. Hideous. They're everything I've spent my life trying to erase. Cale shook his head firmly. No. They're proof you survived something unimaginable. That takes strength. Real strength. Not the kind people fake with fancy clothes or shiny titles. His words caught her off guard. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. Most would either recoil in disgust or offer hollow platitudes meant to ease discomfort. But Cale wasn't doing either. He was seeing her, not the Heiress, not the flawless facade, but the person beneath it all. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. She tried to blink them away, embarrassed by her vulnerability. But Cale didn't seem fazed. Instead, he pulled up a stool and sat down beside her. Tell me what happened, he said gently, if you want to. And so, for the first time in decades, Althea told her story. She spoke of the explosion, the pain, the months spent recovering in isolation. She recounted how her family had covered up the incident, spinning lies to protect their reputation. And she explained how she'd been forced to live behind a mask ever since, hiding not just her scars, but also the trauma that came with them. As she spoke, Cale listened intently, never interrupting, never judging. When she finished, he let out a long breath. That's heavy, he admitted, but you're still standing. That says a lot about who you are. Althea looked at him, searching his face for any trace of pity or mockery. Finding none, she felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, relief, maybe even hope. I don't know how to fix this, she confessed quietly. How do I stop being ashamed of something that's part of me? Cale smiled, a spark of determination lighting up his eyes. You don't fix it by hiding it. You fix it by owning it. What if we create something that doesn't cover your scars, but celebrates them? Something that turns them into art, into strength. The idea was radical, almost unthinkable. Yet, as Althea considered it, a tiny seed of possibility began to grow within her. Could she really transform her greatest source of shame into something beautiful? For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe it might be possible, with Cal's help. What started as a reluctant partnership was slowly becoming something more profound. A journey toward healing, acceptance, and reinvention. Neither of them knew where it would lead, but one thing was certain. They were no longer working alone. The idea was bold, audacious even, transforming Althea's scars into living art. At first, Althea struggled to wrap her mind around it. How could something that had haunted her for so long become a source of pride? Yet Cal's unwavering belief in the concept began to chip away at her doubts. Slowly, hesitantly, she started to envision what he described. Glowing patterns that danced across her skin, responding to her emotions and movements like a symphony of light. Their collaboration took on new urgency as they dove headfirst into designing the prosthetic system. Cal spent countless hours sketching designs, experimenting with materials, and programming neural interfaces. Althea, meanwhile, shared insights about her culture's aesthetics, what symbols carried meaning, which colors evoked emotion, and how certain shapes could convey strength or resilience. Together, they worked tirelessly, their combined creativity pushing boundaries neither had imagined before. Cal's workshop ship became a hive of activity. Half-finished prototypes cluttered every surface, some glowing faintly while others sputtered and died. Frustration often bubbled over during testing phases when circuits shorted or algorithms failed. This isn't working. Althea snapped one evening after yet another prototype malfunctioned, its lights flickering erratically. Maybe this was a mistake. Cal didn't argue. Instead, he handed her a cup of steaming tea, a human custom he'd introduced to her, and sat down beside her. It's not a mistake, he said firmly. We're building something no one's ever done before. That means we'll fail 100 times before we get it right. But when we do," he trailed off, his eyes gleaming with excitement, "it'll be worth it." His optimism was infectious, and despite her frustration, Althea couldn't help but smile. She realized how much she admired his tenacity, his refusal to give up even when things seemed impossible. It reminded her of herself, or at least the version of herself she wanted to become. As weeks turned into months, their bond deepened. They argued passionately over design choices, laughed at each other's quirks, and found solace in shared moments of quiet reflection. One night, as they pored over blueprints under the soft glow of overhead lights, Althea glanced at Cale and felt a pang of gratitude. For years, she'd shouldered her burdens alone, convinced no one would understand. But here was someone who not only understood but also believed in her potential. Finally, after months of trial and error, they completed the first functional prototype. The device consisted of bioluminescent alloys woven into a flexible mesh that adhered seamlessly to her skin. Tiny sensors embedded within the mesh detected changes in her body temperature, pulse rate, and muscle tension, translating them into shifting patterns of light. When activated, the scars transformed into radiant designs, swirling constellations, flowing rivers of color, and intricate geometric shapes that pulsed with life. Althea hesitated before trying it on, her hands trembling slightly as she held the delicate mesh. "What if it doesn't work?" she whispered. "It will," Cale assured her, his voice steady. "And even if it doesn't, we'll fix it, together." Taking a deep breath, Althea pressed the mesh against her arm. A warm, tingling sensation spread through her skin as the device sensed with her nervous system. Then, slowly, her scars began to glow. Tears welled up in her eyes as she watched the jagged lines transform into shimmering waves of gold and silver. It wasn't just beautiful, it was breathtaking. For the first time in her life, Althea saw her scars not as flaws, but as masterpieces. They told a story of survival, of resilience, of hope. And though the road ahead would still be challenging, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. With Cale by her side, she was ready to step into the light. The final stages of the prosthetic system were nearly complete, and Althea felt a cautious optimism she hadn't known in years. For the first time, she dared to imagine a future where she didn't have to hide. But as fate would have it, peace is often fleeting when secrets are involved. One evening, while Cale was running diagnostics on the latest prototype, Althea received an urgent message from her family's security team. Her cousin Valen, a cunning and ambitious member of House Vera, had uncovered evidence of her scars. Worse still, he had leaked images of her exposed arm to the galactic media. The holographic photos spread like wildfire across news feeds, accompanied by sensational headlines. Asterisk, "The Flawed Heiress," "Scandal Rocks House Vera Asterisk," and asterisk, "Althea's Hidden Shame Exposed." Asterisk. Althea stared at the glowing screen in horror, her hands trembling as she read the articles. Rumors swirled about her supposed weakness, questioning whether someone so damaged was fit to lead one of the galaxy's most powerful dynasties. Comment sections erupted with cruel remarks, some mocking her appearance, others speculating about how such imperfections could tarnish House Vera's reputation. Cale noticed her distress immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting aside his tools. She handed him the tablet without a word. His expression darkened as he scrolled through the reports. "This wasn't just an accident," he said grimly. "Someone wanted to hurt you." Althea nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Valen. He's always resented me, for being chosen over him as heir, for having everything he thinks I don't deserve. And now he's destroyed me." Cale's jaw tightened, but his tone remained calm. "No, he hasn't. Not unless you let him." She looked at him, tears welling up in her eyes. "How can I fight this? My entire life has been built on perfection. Now everyone knows the truth, the ugly, shameful truth." He stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. Then show them there's nothing shameful about it. You've already transformed your scars into something beautiful. Don't let fear stop you from sharing that with the world." His words reignited a flicker of determination within her. She thought back to all the hours they'd spent creating the prosthetic system, not to erase her flaws, but to celebrate them. Wasn't that worth fighting for? Together, they devised a daring plan. Instead of retreating into silence, Althea would confront the scandal head-on. She decided to unveil the prosthetic system at an upcoming intergalactic summit, a high-profile event attended by dignitaries, journalists, and influencers from across the galaxy. It was risky. Failure could cement her shame forever. But success might redeem not only herself, but also redefine what it meant to be strong. As preparations for the summit intensified, tension simmered between Althea and her family. Some members of House Vera supported her bold move, seeing it as a chance to restore honor. Others, including Valen, openly opposed her, accusing her of prioritizing personal vanity over tradition. Their arguments grew heated, culminating in a private confrontation where Valen sneered, "You're making a spectacle of yourself. Do you really think people will see you as anything other than damaged goods?" Althea met his gaze steadily. "Maybe they'll see me as human, as someone who survived and thrived. Isn't that more valuable than pretending to be perfect?" The night before the summit, Althea and Kale stayed up late fine-tuning the final details of the prosthetic system. As they worked, she reflected on how far she'd come since their first meeting. Back then, she'd been terrified of anyone discovering her secret. Now she was ready to stand in front of the entire galaxy and declare that her scars weren't a burden. They were proof of her resilience. When dawn broke, Althea stood before a mirror, adjusting the prosthetic mesh one last time. Her scars glowed softly, shifting colors with every breath. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Tomorrow, she would face the world, not as a flawed Heiress, but as a beacon of hope and strength. Whatever happened next, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. The intergalactic summit was held aboard the Celestial Nexus orbital station, a marvel of engineering that hovered gracefully above a shimmering blue planet. Its grand halls sparkled with crystalline chandeliers and holographic displays, each corner alive with the buzz of delegates from across the galaxy. Representatives from noble houses, corporate empires, and independent factions mingled, their conversations laced with diplomacy, ambition, and intrigue. Althea stood backstage, her heart pounding as she prepared to take the stage. She wore a sleek, form-fitting gown designed to complement the prosthetic system Hal had built for her. Her scars, once hidden beneath layers of shame, now glowed faintly beneath the fabric, hinting at the revelation to come. Kale stood beside her, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm of nerves threatening to overwhelm her. "You've got this," he whispered, offering an encouraging smile. "Just remember why you're doing this." She nodded, drawing strength from his words. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about challenging the rigid ideals that had governed her life, and countless others like her, for generations. As Althea stepped onto the stage, a hush fell over the crowd. Cameras flashed, capturing every detail of her poised entrance. Whispers rippled through the audience as they recognized the woman whose image had dominated headlines for weeks. Some looked curious, others skeptical, but all were captivated. "Distinguished guests," Althea began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "I stand before you today, not as the perfect Heiress some expected me to be, but as someone who has faced imperfection and lived to tell the tale." Her words commanded attention. The room grew silent as she continued, sharing her story with unflinching honesty. She spoke of the accident that left her scared, the years spent hiding behind holograms, and the societal pressures that made her feel unworthy. Her voice wavered only once, when she described the pain of being judged not for her actions, but for her appearance. Yet she pressed on, determined to reclaim her narrative. Then came the moment she had been building toward. With a deep breath, Althea activated the prosthetic system. A collective gasp swept through the audience as her scars transformed into radiant patterns of light. Intricate designs pulsed across her skin, shifting colors in response to her emotions. Golds and silvers danced along her arms, while soft blues and purples traced the lines of her neck. It was breathtaking, a fusion of art, technology, and resilience. "This is who I am," Althea declared, meeting the eyes of those around her. "My scars are not flaws. They are reminders of my survival, my strength, and my humanity. They remind me that perfection is not the absence of imperfection. It's the courage to embrace it." The room erupted into applause, the sound echoing like thunder. Delegates rose to their feet, moved by her vulnerability and conviction. Even the most stoic among them couldn't hide their admiration. For the first time, Althea felt truly seen, not as an object of pity or scorn, but as a symbol of hope. Cale watched from the wings, pride swelling in his chest. He knew this moment would change everything, not just for Althea, but for anyone who had ever felt trapped by society's expectations. After her speech, dignitaries approached Althea to offer congratulations and support. Journalists clamored for interviews, eager to share her story with the galaxy. And though Valen lingered in the shadows, his scowl spoke volumes. He had underestimated her resolve. That night, as Althea gazed out at the stars from her quarters, she felt a profound sense of peace. The weight she'd carried for so long had lifted, replaced by a newfound purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. And she owed much of that transformation to the human engineer who had dared to see her differently. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Althea allowed herself to dream of a future where imperfection was celebrated, not feared. In the days following the summit, Althea's life changed in ways she could never have anticipated. The galaxy, once quick to judge her imperfections, now hailed her as a visionary leader, a symbol of resilience and authenticity. News outlets ran stories celebrating her courage, calling her speech one of the most powerful moments in intergalactic history. Even rival houses, long critical of House Heiress traditionalism, praised her for challenging outdated norms. But it wasn't just public opinion that shifted. Within her own family, attitudes began to evolve. Members of House Vera, who had once dismissed her scars as a liability, now saw them as proof of her strength. Her parents, stoic and reserved for much of her life, embraced her with a warmth she hadn't felt since childhood. "You've shown us what true leadership looks like," her mother said during a rare moment of vulnerability. "We're proud of you." Valen, however, remained bitter. Though his attempts to undermine her had backfired spectacularly, he refused to admit defeat. Instead, he retreated into sullen silence, plotting behind the scenes. Althea knew better than to trust him, but she no longer feared him. His resentment was powerless against the tide of change she had set in motion. As House Vera adapted to this new era, Althea championed reforms aimed at fostering inclusivity and acceptance. She introduced policies encouraging open dialogue about personal struggles, dismantling the stigma surrounding imperfection. Slowly but surely, her vision began to reshape not only her family's legacy, but also the broader cultural landscape of the galaxy. Meanwhile, Cale returned to his workshop ship, resuming his work among the stars. Yet their bond endured. They exchanged messages regularly, sharing updates on their respective projects and reflecting on how far they'd come. Cale continued to gain recognition for his inventions, though he always credited Althea as his inspiration. "If it weren't for you," he told her during one call, "I might never have realized the power of turning flaws into strengths." Althea smiled, touched by his words. Their partnership had transformed both their lives, forging a friendship deeper than either had expected. Though their paths diverged, they remained united by a shared belief in progress and possibility. One evening, Althea stood on the balcony of her palace, gazing out at the cosmos. The prosthetic system glowed softly on her skin, its patterns shifting with her thoughts. No longer did she see her scars as reminders of shame. They were badges of honor, symbols of everything she had overcome. She thought back to the first time she met Kale, when she'd been so guarded, so afraid of being seen. Now she wore her scars proudly, knowing they told a story worth sharing. The galaxy still had its challenges, prejudices ran deep, and change was never easy. But Althea felt hopeful. People were beginning to question old ideals, embracing diversity in all its forms. And she knew that every step forward mattered, no matter how small. As the stars twinkled above her, Althea allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought of Kel, whose unconventional wisdom had guided her through her darkest hours. She thought of her family, slowly learning to let go of rigid traditions. And she thought of herself, not as the fragile girl she once was, but as the strong, confident woman she had become. The future stretched before her like an uncharted galaxy, full of possibilities waiting to be explored. Whatever lay ahead, Althea faced it with unwavering determination. She had found her place among the stars, and she intended to shine. For the first time in her life, Althea Vera felt free.